We're now joined by Daniel du Plessis, Communications Director at Milkor, as we look at border security and safety throughout the festive season. Thank you so much, Neil, for your time this afternoon. So we've just heard from the BMA. I mean, with 6 million people expected to cross through the country's borders during this festive period, essentially we're talking about 2 to 3 weeks here. How confident are you that the plan in place is sufficient?
So firstly, I think the work that the BMA is doing is tremendous work with the resources that they have. I think they have extremely limited resources, specifically in terms of border soldiers. And reading the press release and also listening to Dr. Masiapato's plans to implement over this next few weeks, which is a very busy season for border crossings and illegal people coming through the country. Usually a high level of crime being committed during this period as well. I think they are doing quite well with the resources they have available. Specifically, also quite pleased to hear about their cooperation with Interpol and the SABC, as well as with the Department of Social Justice or Social Community Services, to strengthen not just the soldiers and the people on the ground doing the inspections for border crossings, but also assisting them with the equipment that they need to do those things effectively. It does, however, raise a more prevalent issue, I think, still within the BMA and within South Africa's borders, is that the need for higher-end technology to streamline this process is still really relevant. And it is something I know Dr. Masiapato and his team in the BMA is working quite hard on. So I feel confident that they're going to perform their capabilities quite well with the limited resources they have. And looking forward, I think it will only get better from here.
And just another point that they also, touched on during that media briefing is the issue of illegal mining, which, of course, we've seen dominating our headlines again over the past few weeks. And the question, of course, is just the easy access of illegal miners through our borders. There have been, of course, a number of countries that have been mentioned, including Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Namibia to a certain extent, as well as Lesotho. But what we are also hearing about the criminality involving the illegal mining, outside of those that are acting as laborers, there's also these gangs that are operating amongst the miners, and they're heavily armed, we're told. I mean, how critical is it then that all these countries work together to make sure that these criminal activities are minimized?
Yeah, I think it's a real threat, and we've seen similar instances in Johannesburg as well, with some illegal mining activity and what chaos it can cause to a city and an interstate as well. Most of these illegal miners do stem from neighboring countries, and it is because of the porous borders that South Africa then shares. I know that there are a lot of political differences and opinion differences in this, some people being for the crossing and freer, less lenient crossings of borders, and some people being more pro towards that. I think, irregardless of your personal perspective, I think the fallout of people entering into the country illegally is being seen in this day and age. And it's not just the illegal miners, it's also food poisoning happening with illegal substances entering into the country. And it does actually outline a larger issue and a larger requirement for South Africa to take their border security quite seriously. Now, on that note, I think the intergovernmental agreements and discussions happening between our neighboring countries as well as international companies and institutions like Interpol, for example, is really good. I think it's going as it should. It does, however, take a lot of time getting these policies in place and getting governments to cooperate on a certain level between not just trades, but also the inflow and outflow of people, and allowing that to be streamlined as well. So I think it all boils down to a priority. I think we as the South African public and people working in this industry need to outline and emphasize the importance of this and hold government accountable to make our borders safe, number one, and also control the inflow outflow of people and substances that could potentially harm or cause serious issues within the country.
Let's look at then just some of the safety measures that have been put up in place in various provinces during this festive period. Just in terms of other criminal activities on the rise during this time particularly, how prepared do you think our law enforcement teams are I mean, just this morning we were reporting of how police managed to foil an ATM bombing and killed 5 suspects. They may see this, of course, as a successful operation, but the reality is that ATM bombings, as we've heard in our previous report, are on the increase year to year, over 20%, I understand, by the banking authority. I mean, are we winning, the fight there against those kinds of criminality? I haven't even touched on the extortion that has been on the rise.
Yeah, look, I think South Africans in general are quite accustomed to crimes happening in their neighborhoods and the communities on a larger scale in different forms. It can be either mafia holding construction companies hostage or illegal mining activities, as well as training camps for terrorists that we've also been uncovered and exposed to in recent months. I think what it does streamline into and just specifically bringing it back to border security is that it's your first line of defense, right? So getting access and control of the people that enter into this country illegally and legally so is quite an important fact to know who is in the country and what the operations might entail. And then the secondary thing is also the inflow and outflow of goods that might potentially harm people and citizens of South Africa. Now, that's the first line of defense. And I think that's why it's important for government agencies such as the SABC, the Hawks, the SANDF, as well as the BMA to cooperate quite in a larger degree in sharing of communications and create a streamlined defense and security cluster that is able to effectively combat and deal with these things should new intel arise. I think one of the major things that we are failing at the moment is the response rate to the point from when we get information about these things to where we actually try and act onto it. And I think it's something that can be improved on. In terms of the festive season, I think one of the major threats to South Africans at the moment, and has been over a certain period of time, is still motor accidents. People going to the coast and back to Gauteng areas to visit family and things like that. These things are still quite prevalent, and I think it also ties in with Metro Police that also brings that into the equation. So a lot of different sectors, a lot of different government agencies will be hard at work to ensure our safety. We have to have confidence that they will do their job effectively. Yeah. And I think discussion and importance around this should be a more prevalent thing to us.
Absolutely. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Daniel du Plessis, Communications Director at Milkor, there for us.